We will give Éomer double strike, attack in. Intro. Hey friend, welcome to Poor Mana's Magic, a place where the wild cards never rain on our parade. Today, we are taking a little bit of time out of our weekend to respond to a viewer request for a deck build. Now, the viewer is fairly new to Magic, and they wanted to know how to build a deck around Éomer, Marshal of Rohan, and Éomer of the Riddermark. Now, we are mostly going to stay in the Lord of the Rings set here. We wanted to create something with some nice flavor, something that would be playable and interesting for anyone coming into Magic just for the Lord of the Rings set. So this is what we've come up with. This is going to be our Ride of the Rohirrim deck. Now, in the one slot, we have Esquire of the King, a 1-mana human soldier. We also have Ranger's Firebrand, a 1-mana sorcery, 2 damage to any target spell. In the 2-mana slot, we're going to have a few different options. We're going to have a Vigilant 2-mana Eastmark Cavalier. We're going to have a little bit of protection slash sort of counterspelly in white in Reprieve, which is a 1-mana 1-white instant that returns a target spell to its owner's hand and lets us draw. We're also playing Flowering of the White Tree, a legendary enchantment for 2 white mana that says legendary creatures you control get +2/+1 and have ward 1, and non-legendary creatures get +1/+1. One of our better cards in this deck is Rally at the Hornburg. This is a sorcery speed spell that creates 2 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens, but it also gives humans we control haste until end of turn. Now we'll come back to this one in a second. Continuing on in the 2-mana slot, we have some more removal in Smite the Deathless, which is going to exile a creature and does 3 damage. We have 1 copy of Mary, Esquire of Rohan, which is a 1 red, 1 white legendary halfling knight with haste and first strike as long as it's equipped. And it says whenever you attack with Mary and another legendary creature, draw a card. Now, because we have some legendary effects like Flowering of the White Tree and Mary, we want to play some other legendary creatures. So in the 3 slot, we have 1 copy of Éowyn, Lady of Rohan. We have 3 copies of Théoden, King of Rohan, which is going to give a target creature double strike whenever a human enters the battlefield. We also have some card draw in Quarrel's End, and in the 4-mana slot is where most of the damage of our deck is going to be done. We have Gandalf White Rider, a 3-mana, 1 white legendary avatar wizard with vigilance. It says whenever you cast a spell, creatures you control get +1/+0, and you scry 1. Whenever Gandalf dies, you can put it in its owner's library 5th from the top. We also have 2 copies of Erkenbrand, a legendary human soldier that whenever a human enters the battlefield under our control, creatures we control get +1/+0. And we have Éomer, Marshal of Rohan, a 2-mana, 2-red legendary human knight with haste that says whenever 1 or more other attacking legendary creatures you control die, untap all creatures you control. And after this phase, there's an additional combat phase. Now this is going to be great. We have another hasty human knight legendary creature in Éowyn, Fearless Knight. We have Éomer of the Riddermark, a hasty 5-drop. We have Shadowfax, Lord of Horses, a hasty horse in our 5-drop. So we have a lot of hasty legendary creatures that when those come down around Éomer, Marshal of Rohan, we can really set up 1 or 2 waves of attacks. Now this is a pretty cool mechanic on its own, but when you combine it with the buffs, the double strike buff off Théoden or the +1/+0 buff off Erkenbrand, you can really create some exciting swings. We're going to keep our mana base super simple for this one, and let's go ahead, jump into the Alchemy play queue, and see if our Rohirrim can be victorious. Okay, on the play against Deathmonger, we do have something to do on turn 2, and we have a really strong turn 3 and 4, so we'll go ahead and keep this. The combo of Théoden, Éomer, and Erkenbrand is just, those are the linchpins, aren't they? So we'll go ahead and play a mountain, just to make opponent think twice about a turn 1 play. Forest into mana creature. Nope. Okay. So we'll play out our plains. Opponent holding up priority with 1 mana. I wonder what that could be. Play down a swamp into a Rotpriest. I don't really want any part of that, so we'll go ahead and return that. We'll get a rally. Théoden comes down. Mary comes down. So we'll go ahead and play a Mary. Hopefully it doesn't get removed. Ah, it will. That's too bad. Unless there is some other instant they're holding up with Rotpriest. Go ahead and attack with Mary. Next turn, we do have Éomer or Erkenbrand, but I think Éomer, because it has haste, we'll go ahead and attack with, and that will draw a card with Mary. Yep, Rotpriest comes down. Another Erkenbrand off the top. So we'll go ahead and play Éomer, and if we draw into a land next turn, we can do the sweet combo of Théoden and Rally together, and that is going to be pretty sweet. So Mary might get taken out here with some sort of bump off of Rotpriest. We'll see. Next turn, a Théoden and Ranger's Firebrand isn't so bad. Yep, Undying Malice, that's okay. So it will come back after blocking, and that's okay. Definitely not the worst from us. Now a Rotpriest is going to get pretty nasty pretty fast, but we do have a lot of power in hand, and a Rally at the Hornburg is not a bad thing. Unfortunately, the +1/+1 counter does put it out of range of our Firebrand. But maybe there's going to be a second. Yep. Okay, Blightbelly Rat. Now, Undying Malice does make creature come in tapped. Ooh, okay. Well, we have to go for our Théoden into Rally of the Thornburg. So let's give that a go and see what happens. Yeah, we'll give our Mary double strike. We will give our Théoden and our Éomer double strike. Very nice. Oop. Oop. All of our creatures now have haste. This is pretty much exactly what this deck is meant to do. If we get to attack, which we can, we'll get to draw off Mary. And if they kill any of our legendary creatures, we'll be able to move to another combat phase. Undying Malice on Blightbelly Rat, that's okay. We'll probably block Éomer here. They do. So we'll do 8, 9, 10 damage. Not too shabby, not too shabby. Okay, it will proliferate. So we are a little iffy on the poison right now, but we have our opponents down to 6. We have a little bit of go face damage in hand. We can actually Firebrand to face, make one of our creatures a ring bearer, which would be unblockable by opponent. We can then play down Eastmark Cavalier, give that unblockable creature double strike with Théoden, but we don't even have to. Deathmonger gives it up. GG's. Okay, on the draw against Darko, we have some early removal, some card draw, a Théoden, a Shadowfax. This is a keeper. Yep, Meriadoc Brandybuck comes down. We will go ahead and remove that promptly. Next turn, we might play out a Théoden. We'll see what they have. It looks like this is definitely going to be the Hobbit's deck. Another Meriadoc. We have Erkenbrand on turn 3. I kind of like the idea. Well, we have all of our 5 mana to ramp up to Shadowfax, to curve out, rather. I kind of like the idea of Quarrel's ending here. Maybe dropping one of our lands. Likelihood is we'll draw another. We draw 2 more. Okay. So next turn we can play Erkenbrand into Théoden and start attacking. So our turn 5 play is going to be Shadowfax, which when it comes down can attack, and when it attacks we can put a creature with lesser power onto the battlefield, and we can make that our Théoden. Now when Théoden comes onto the board, Erkenbrand is going to give our creatures +1/+0. Théoden is going to give something double strike. Wow, Battle of Bywater just for 1 creature? I don't agree with that, opponent, but I'll let them play as they will. Now, they only have 1 mana. We have a Smite the Deathless, which is pretty good. We'll go ahead and play down our Shadowfax. We'll get a Théoden onto the board. Opponent can sacrifice some foods and draw. Yep. Yes, please. Oop. We'll give our Shadowfax double strike. And as you can see, If you can land a couple of these buff cards on the board, you can have some pretty successful turns. Now, we are flooding out quite a bit. Opponent does have a lot of food, a lot of card draw, and some nice small creatures to kind of hold us up. It would be nice if we could draw one more human, maybe even an Éomer off the top. Smite the Deathless can deal with some creature, one of their blockers, but we'll see what comes down. We'll see what we draw into. Battle of Bywater again. Man. It's interesting that they are just playing that out as essentially like a 1-for-1. They keep attacking with Meriadoc. We will, before we play anything, Smart Cavalier, not too bad. Now we will go ahead and Smite the Deathless. We'll see if they want to hold up some sort of protection spell or return something to our hand. They might just let this go through but crack all their food tokens, and that would be totally fine with us. Yep, they do. Drawing cards. They can draw 2 more cards. They're probably going to draw into a nice replacement for Peregrine Took. We will play out our Eastmark Cavalier. This is going to trigger Théoden and give something else double strike. We'll go ahead and put it on Théoden. They still have 2 mana to do something with, but they could just be cracking a food. Okay, so we get in for 2, 4, 5. Opponent's down to 4. We have 3 creatures on board. They have some foods and probably a Samwise. Yep, Samwise the Stouthearted is going to return a permanent to their hand. They don't do that because we exiled their Peregrine Took. Nice little use case for Smite the Deathless. Play down a second Samwise. So now whenever a creature comes down, it's going to create another food. They do only have 1 forest, though, which is kind of interesting. We really need to draw into any of our hasty creatures. They attack with a Meriadoc, so they can crack 1 food, which can put them up to 7. They are attacking with the Samwise. They create another food. I think we'll hold back. We'll see if we can sneak some damage in here. Oop, they have a Razor, Verge Thicket, and another land. We're getting a little unlucky with the flooding. I don't really want to trade anything here. Yep, opponent's going to gain some life. So we had the advantage in this one. We were building up our board nicely, and then we just got stalled out with our lands. 8 in 16, pretty bad. Prosperous Innkeeper, very nice. So opponent really starting to go off with their halflings. A lot of food, a lot of card draw, some incidental life gain off Innkeeper. It's not going to work for you guys. So we're going to go ahead and not block there, but block with our 1/1. They might have the pump spell where they can sack a food to give a creature +4/+4. They don't. Very interesting. They can return some permanents with Samwise Gamgee by sacrificing foods, but it has to be a historic, which most of their cards are. Most of them are legendaries. Yep. We'll go ahead and do that. Replay at flash, so instant speed. Oof. We are just not drawing into our best cards here. Let's see. So I guess we're probably just going to have to pass the turn. We might be able to set up for something interesting next turn. And if they try to flash Sam in this turn, we can return it to their hand, draw a card, and maybe try to pull a little bit ahead. Another land. Oof. 9 of 18, keeping up with that 50% land. That's pretty rough for us. Opponent coming down, creating a lot of foods, gaining some life back. Samwise, yep, gonna come down, create some more foods, gain some more life. They can now start their drawing and discarding. Just kind of filtering through the top of their deck. They discard another Meriadoc Brandybuck. So we'll see what we have here. If it's going to be another land, we'll go ahead and concede. But we really got stalled out in an unfortunate way. It is entirely up to the RNG. Gandalf White Rider. Now, it's a nice card to play, but it doesn't really do much or change anything. It gets another creature on board. Pretty effective blocker. But opponent is just going to continue cracking foods, creating more foods, returning cards. Recursion is probably going to be too much for us, and they can swing in multiple times per turn. I think this one is probably done. We'll go ahead and move on to the next one. Okay, on the play against Fearless 86. Really, really nice hand, solid curve out. We have the House of Royalty, Théoden, Éowyn, and Éomer. Very nice. We have our Rally at the Hornburg for turn 2, which is going to create some tokens and give them haste. Play out a mountain. See what our opponent is going to show us. Jetmir's Garden. Okay. So that could be any number of things, but I would guess is probably a food deck. Maybe that plays Rocco. We'll see. Another Jetmir's Garden. So this is actually pretty solid for us. We'll go ahead and play our Théoden down. This is going to put us way ahead on board. Get in for 3 damage. We have a hasty Éowyn coming out next turn. We could also Quarrel's End if we wanted to draw into a little bit more gas. But for now, I think we just keep our whip on the horse, so to speak. 3 mana now for opponent. Spiteful Banditry. Interesting. I have not seen this card yet. Spiteful Banditry is a mythic enchantment, X cost and 2 reds, that says when it enters the battlefield, deals X damage to each creature. Whenever one or more creatures your opponents control die, you create a treasure. So that's pretty unfortunate. We're going to go ahead and Quarrel's End. Drop our Firebrand. Create a token. Excellent. There we go. Okay, so we drew into another permanent, which is great. It is unfortunately a 1/1, but that's how it goes. We'll attack in with Théoden. And now we have a pretty good opportunity to finish out the game. So Éomer comes down at 5 mana with haste, and if we control a creature with the greatest power among creatures on the battlefield, we get to create another token. So if they do not deal with, it looks like they aren't going to. This is phenomenal. Okay, so they played out an Aragorn, company leader. We could create... What could we do here? I think it's just going to have to be Éomer, isn't it? So if we play Éomer, we can attack in with that. We can give it double strike, which is pretty gross. And it does put a big body on the field. So let's go ahead and do that. We will give Éomer double strike, attack in. They have to block with Aragorn. Éomer, because it has the highest power, created another token which triggered Théoden, which gave it double strike. So now we're dealing 4, 5, 6 damage outside of the Éomer, putting ourselves in a pretty strong position here. And opponent explodes. GG's Fearless 86. I'm interested to know what they were playing. It seemed like the start of a pretty cool deck. Okay, with that, we're going to call it a day for our Ride of the Rohirrim deck. Now, after playing a few different games, it really seems like there are some mechanics that you could lean into if you didn't want to play all of these individual cards. I think Gandalf was a little too slow for this deck. I think Éomer is a pretty strong card, but I actually think that in terms of the synergies with the rest of the Rohirrim, Éomer of the Riddermark might be slightly stronger. So long as you can curve into it fairly effectively, you put it down on turn 5, it gains haste. If you have a Théoden down, it has double strike. Erkenbrand is also super strong, so we're going to go ahead and cut out the Gandalf. We're going to add in another Erkenbrand. I really love Éowyn, Fearless Knight, as a card. I think it's an excellent counter to a lot of the Amass decks, to some of the bigger power and toughness decks. We're actually going to add another Éomer of the Riddermark, though. We didn't get to see our Flowering of the White Tree in action, but I think this is still probably a good play. Ranger's Firebrand didn't do as much for us, although the Ring Tempting could be a pretty nice way of working around some of the bigger creatures, especially with our hasty Little Mary. I actually think, though, that we are going to cut out our 4 mana Éomer, and instead just kind of keep it like this. This is a pretty 2-3 drop dependent deck, but I think if you can curve out maybe a Rally or an Eastmark Cavalier into a Théoden, into one of your 4 drops, you're going to have a pretty powerful swing. So I hope you enjoyed the gameplay as much as I enjoyed playing it. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and comment, as it really does help my small channel grow. And I will see you in the next one.